This slideshow is about the prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s. The temperance movement. In an effort to combat alcoholism, child and wife abuse, poverty and crime, a movement was created to limit people's alcohol intake. People could still drink alcohol, just not a lot of it. This was called the temperance movement. Most of the people involved in this movement were women. Women suffered the most from the alcoholism of their husbands or fathers. In this picture, you see women from a temperance group blocking the door to a bar, while its male customers wait impatiently on the sidewalk. The temperance movement wanted to limit a person's alcohol intake, but some people wanted to prohibit alcohol entirely. This was called prohibition. This was also popular among middle-class women. As you have now learned, the prohibition and temperance movements were both popular among women. Women suffered the most from the problems created when men became alcoholics. Look closely at the signs. What are the good things prohibition was supposed to bring? What were some of the bad things prohibition was supposed to stop? Who are brewers, and why do they have money? Record your answers on the note sheet, please.
They want your sweet, innocent girls to take to booze so they can be enticed into honky-tonks by slick-haired vultures who prey on the flower of American womanhood. I say alcohol must go.
In the decade before the Civil War, many believed that the most dangerous drug in America was alcohol.
The 18th Amendment changed the Constitution of the United States in 1920. It prohibits the use, manufacture, buying, selling, importing, and transporting of any alcoholic beverages in the United States. The alcoholic beverages that were prohibited were grain alcohol that people drink, not wood alcohol, that is the alcohol that is used in hospitals and the nurse's office to sterilize something. People who wanted to keep alcohol legal were called wet. People who wanted to make alcohol illegal were called dry. Look at this newspaper. Is it a wet newspaper or a dry newspaper?
On January 16, 1920, the Great American Bender came to an end when the Volstead Act was signed into law and became the 18th Amendment to the Constitution. So began the Great Prohibition era, brought on in part by a decades-old grassroots temperance campaign organized largely by women that had already succeeded in banning liquor in 25 states. Now the entire country would go dry. Everywhere, law enforcement officials set about enforcing prohibition by tracking down stills and stashes and disposing of them. Throughout the country, raids were made on bootleggers' hideouts, and cask after cask of bathtub gin were hacked open by eager police.
This is a chart of the number of gallons of alcohol that Americans consumed by year. It is an average. Not everybody consumed this much, and some people consumed a lot more. Please look at the left side of the graph at 1910. It starts out at 1.6 gallons of alcohol per person, but notice as the time goes by, 1915 up to 1918, 1919, every year the amount of alcohol drops. That is because of the effects of the temperance movement and the prohibition movement. Look at the lowest bar. That's 1921. That was after prohibition had been enforced for one solid year. But notice that after that, alcohol consumption goes right back up. 1922, 1923, 1924. All of this is when alcohol is illegal, but obviously people are still drinking it. Is prohibition keeping alcohol away from people? Did the 18th Amendment have the desired effect on alcohol use? This chart shows the percentage of alcohol-related crimes during Prohibition. The chart begins at the year 1890, before the Prohibition Amendment was passed in 1920. In 1890 until Prohibition, crime stayed level at about 40% until the year 1920, when crime doubles and continues to be very high until Prohibition was repealed and alcohol was made legal again in the year 1933. On your paper, answer the question, did the 18th Amendment have the desired effect on crime? Organized criminal gangs grew to serve the illegal demand for alcohol. They used to bootleg or transport illegal bathtub gin, which was made from wood alcohol, glycerin, and juniper juice and mixed in somebody's bathtub. They would transport it to illegal bars called speakeasies for people to drink. Remember, one of the things Prohibition was supposed to stop was crime. Unfortunately, once alcohol was illegal, gangs saw this as an opportunity to make money by selling people illegal alcohol. This is a diagram of a still where people could turn corn, water, and yeast into grain alcohol. Some, quote, liquor contained no alcohol at all. But people could count on a man named Bill McCoy who bought liquor in the Bahamas where it was legal and sailed it into coastal towns of the United States, providing the real McCoy for his customers. Wood alcohol was legal during Prohibition, but it would cause blindness and death if you drank too much of it. It was not made out of grain, it was made out of wood. Glycerin and juniper juice were added to make this concoction smell and taste like gin, but they were both toxic poisons. New York City had 15,000 legal bars before Prohibition. During Prohibition, New York City had 32,000 illegal speakeasy bars. Prohibition was supposed to close down bars and keep people from drinking alcohol. In this picture, we see flappers drinking bathtub gin and dancing to hot jazz music. In the basement of this building was the most popular speakeasy in all of New York City, but it was well hidden, as you can see.
The problems with legislating morality soon became abundantly clear as underground drinking spots, speakeasies, flourished as millions of Americans evaded prohibition and continued to party like never before. The glamour of the speakeasies proved a powerful attraction, and later research showed that more people drank during the 1920s than before Prohibition.
In this picture, also taken inside a speakeasy, we see dozens of people doing a dance called the Charleston in front of a large jazz band. Crime was also a huge problem during Prohibition. Gang warfare over speakeasies and alcohol supplies increased crime dramatically. One of the worst examples of criminal violence was Al Capone's St. Valentine's Day massacre of a rival gang, which was the best known of all the gangland violence during Prohibition. A turf war over alcohol led to this. On Valentine's Day in Chicago, 1929, Al Capone's South Side gang killed most of the rival Bugs O'Banion's North Side gang in a garage. This is a picture of Bugs Moran, who was a gangster. He was killed by other gangsters. Remember, Prohibition was supposed to stop crime and violence. Al Scarface Capone makes $60 million per year just from selling illegal alcohol in Chicago during Prohibition. The average factory worker in Chicago during Prohibition made $1,000 per year.
Unfortunately, Prohibition had many unintended consequences. For one thing, it divided the country between dries and wets, those who supported or opposed the 18th Amendment. For another, crime soared as people turned to bootleggers to obtain their liquor. Supplying alcohol to a thirsty populace soon became the province of organized criminal syndicates, led by some of the most notorious figures in American history. The bootleggers and organized syndicates armed themselves and operated sophisticated networks. Some, such as crime lord Al Capone, made tremendous fortunes during Prohibition. In one 3-year period, illegal alcohol sales topped $15 million. Around the nation, local district attorneys struggled with a glut of prohibition cases, which sometimes took up over 50% of their time. Law enforcement was costing the country millions.
In 1933, the 21st Amendment was added to the Constitution. This repealed or changed the 18th Amendment, and alcohol was legal again. Unfortunately, even with alcohol legal again, organized crime continued. By the end of the 1920s, most Americans realized that Prohibition had failed. This spare tire cover was used like a bumper sticker would be today.
Franklin Roosevelt campaigned against Prohibition during the 1932 election, and it was a stance that helped propel him to the White House. Finally, in December of 1933, the United States admitted failure and repealed the Volstead Act. Prohibition, with all its lofty moral goals, had at last come to an end.